Thundergrunt.
Hey guys!
Bob!
Hey Bob!
Hey, introduce yourselves.
I am Jimmy George, a screenwriter and full-time script consultant. My Twitter handle is @JimmyRGeorge.
And I'm Jamie Nash. I'm a screenwriter, and my Twitter handle is @Jamie_Nash.
And I'm Bob Rose, and my Twitter handle is @ThunderRunBob. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Jimmy to move his microphone a little bit closer to his face.
Better?
Yes, and everyone listening, welcome to Writers Blockbusters, the show that treats the final edit of a movie like the script. How you guys doing?
Hanging in there, dude.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Today we're going to talk about a movie that was released online on a streaming service because the world is a hellscape.
Indeed.
It's going to be, we're going to talk about Wonder Woman 84.
It was also released in theaters, and I think, I didn't bring up the box office, but I think it made $18 million domestically or something, which is a huge deal given where we're at.
Yeah, gotcha.
But then in week 2, it only made like half of that or less than half or something. So
To be
it
fair,
is what it is.
Yeah, I didn't actually know it made that much. That's actually pretty impressive. And that's just U.S. or is that global, Jamie?
I think it was domestic. Again, I'm not bringing it up, so I'm probably completely wrong. It probably made like $18,000 and change or something.
just completely shooting in the dark.
I just made that number up just to give us something to say.
Either way, I mean, just like for anything, I think this is our first blockbuster we've ever talked about that wasn't released in theaters.
Yeah.
Right? It's
really,
yeah. At
really
least on this
weird.
show, the first one we've ever talked about that wasn't released.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, who wrote this shit?
Who wrote this shit? That should be the name of the podcast.
It really kind of should, but
yeah.
Oh well. I didn't think of it until now.
I don't think despite where we may go with this, that's what we always say at the beginning of this, where I don't know that we ever voice our topic headline that says that or not. But
yeah, that is the very first.
I didn't want to be
topic.
punitive, like this was the only one we've ever said that.
No, yeah, no. Like anyone listening for the first time, I usually say that out loud to Jamie, but it's not a review.
That's right.
That's not part of the review.
That's not part of the review.
I actually think we should. Do you want to say who wrote this first, or should we before we?
Oh, you want to go there first? We can do that.
Let's go there first.
Let's do a Rise of Skywalker episode type of thing.
Yes,
because we know there was going to be a lot of discussion about problems. So how did we all react to the movie outside of any type of take your technical brain out of it?
Yes.
Did you enjoy it? Either one of you
go ahead. Go ahead, Bob. Go ahead.
Okay. Personally, I enjoyed this movie a lot. And in fact, I actually enjoyed it the second time around. Even though I've been doing this podcast with you guys for 2 years, and I could see the litany of problems in that respect, and I am not even going to hide that it is a mess.
Mm-hmm.
I still actually really enjoyed it. And mainly because I find it to be cheesy. I find the villain to be hilarious. Pedro's performance is absolutely insane. And it reminds me of kind of the loose superhero movies of my very young childhood, in the vein of like Superman 3 and maybe even like the Joel Schumacher Batmans. And now that I'm older, I can actually react to that with some maturity, and I actually kind of enjoy that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I am with it, but I am totally ready to dive into the script. Anyway, you guys go ahead.
I'll go. I definitely had fun. And I can remove myself from my like screenwriting mind enough to say like, yeah, I laughed my ass off. But I think we can get in this with tone. I'm not sure I agree with everyone's reaction to the tone being intentional. I don't think it's trying to be Joel Schumacher's Batman movies.
I wasn't trying to insinuate it was.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
And I think it's
I'm saying it reminds me of that.
Yeah, I think
I don't know how it got there though.
I think I enjoy it for the same reasons that you said. But I also think that it thinks it's a completely different movie than it actually is.
I could be down with that, yeah.
Yeah, but that's pretty much how I felt about it.
The only reason I'd throw a curveball at that a little bit is I listened to Patty Jenkins on Marin the other day.
Nice. Okay.
Oh, nice.
And it turns out, and they didn't even, you know how Marin is. He probably didn't even watch. I think he might have watched this movie, but they kind of talked about her influences. And one of her biggest influences was that original Superman, that Richard Donner Superman movie. Biggest influences in her life, let alone for Wonder Woman. So she just adores that movie. So
okay,
I think she kind of hinted at the other Superman movies as well.
Okay, so maybe it was intended for silly is super silly.
Like so I have talked to other friends, and I've actually seen it online, completely divorced from my own life. People have mentioned the silliness of Superman 3. Because Superman 3 is extremely silly.
Yeah.
It also has a very tangentially, like, Superman is not that important to the plot of Superman 3.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't, like what Jamie's saying, like, if Patty Jenkins is that devoted to this, then she's some kind of super genius. She actually kind of pulled it off. Like,
yeah, if that's what she's going for.
It feels as meandering and weird and like late 70s, early 80s superhero produced by Dino De Laurentiis type of weird ass movie. You know what I mean? It's just like a movie that Canon Films made this or something.
Yes. It's Jamie.
Yeah.
Did you like it?
Probably not as much as you two did.
Yeah, I got a feeling on that.
There were parts I enjoyed about it. And look, I woke up Christmas morning. I was ready to go. First of all, it ticked me off that it didn't come out at midnight here. You had to wait to noon. And I was like waiting to noon. And my wife, who doesn't ordinarily watch superhero movies, sat down to watch it too. And I'm not even sure that she's seen the first one. And we watched it. And I had my Wonder Woman tiara on. I couldn't wait. I was excited. So honestly, it did, and I think we'll get into the reasons why. It just slowly I lost interest in it. I was there for it. I was leaning forward. I liked the goofy. I almost thought it was Raimi Spider-Man kind of tone, and like in that mall scene where it's a little corny and a little stylized. Which, of course, I'm a huge Raimi fan, so I love it.
Same.
I was down for all of that, the tone and the style. But as it went on, it just got confusing and the story didn't start. We'll get into all that.
Yeah.
So it really just lost me. I had a lot of goodwill towards it. I like the people in it. I think Gal is an awesome Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
She looks great in the costume. She's fun.
We don't talk about this, but I actually thought Gal's performance was really good in this movie.
Yeah, me too.
Like, she gets a lot of flack, but I was like, even the scenes that don't work because of the writing, I was like, she's kind of selling. Me at least.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I just rewatched it before this, and seeing her come out in those emotional scenes, which don't really resonate with me, like when she's sad. But I'm like, man, the look in her face, and she's really working it here. When she's marching out,
doing the best that they can with the material they have, definitely.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, I got bored with it and kind of gave up about halfway through, and I just didn't like it. And I did, and it was all story reasons. It's just a messy script. The story didn't hook me.
Yeah.
So it's all the reasons that we'll discuss on this that I didn't like it, I think. And ultimately I'd give it not recommend. Where on the flip side, like Rise of Skywalker was equally messy, right? But that movie moves so fast. It was kind of the opposite of what this one does. Like that one had as many issues, but it just barreled through
from a pacing standpoint. Yeah.
So I never really got bored or lost interest.
Not that I will even talk about this, but I'd argue that I'd still rather have this movie because Rise of Skywalker has 40 years of baggage, and it does what you said.
It's true.
And this movie has one movie of baggage. And you know what I mean? I can't enjoy Rise of Skywalker anymore.
In a weird sort of way, I might rather watch this movie again than Rise of Skywalker.
I'll say
in
this,
a weird sort of way.
The second time for me actually was more enjoyable with Wonder Woman 84. I mean,
yeah, I
actually enjoyed it more.
Kind of agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, like grew on me a little bit. I saw what Patty was trying to do a little bit more, but without talking about the script and everything,
Part of it was because I already, when you're watching a movie for a first time, you're waiting for things to kick into gear or make sense. Yeah. And then when they didn't come and I started to lose track. Whereas the second time through, I had my arms around it so I could kind of look at the individual parts.
Yeah.
But yeah, so with that, I'll get to the writer, I guess. So Patty Jenkins actually wrote this screenplay with Jeff Johns and Dave Callahan. The first movie actually had, who was the guy's name? Let me look him up. Why I don't have this up on my screen? Alan Heim? Is it? His name's like Alan. Is it Heinberg?
I don't remember.
I don't know who wrote the first movie.
So the first movie had Alan Heinberg. Let me make sure that's his name before after I've said it 3 times.
I'm sure we're coming from a place where all of us like the first movie, probably except for the third act, right? Like that's
I like the first movie.
So Alan Heinberg wrote the first movie, along with a story by Zack Snyder, and he apparently was somebody that had written Wonder Woman comics before and things like that. But for whatever reason, which happens when you go to sequels and the director comes in, because who knows, Alan Heinberg could have been involved, and I don't know this for sure. He could have been involved before Patty Jenkins even showed up.
Yeah.
He could have written 10 drafts of the script, and then Patty Jenkins could have shown up and just, done the rewrites with uncredited writers, or she could have rewritten it herself and not gotten any credit, which is a common thing that happened.
Also, screenwriters. If I could vomit at the mouth, just, without any knowledge to what happened, but Patty Jenkins was the hero of Wonder Woman, sort of, when the first movie came out. I feel like we didn't talk about Patty Jenkins before that. She made Monster and then was kind of silent for 12, 15 years.
Yeah, doing like Entourage episodes.
Right.
Things
like
that.
But then she, Wonder Woman was this giant smash hit, and then Patty Jenkins kind of came the real life Wonder Woman of DC, right? Like, so it makes sense to me that they would be like, do whatever you want.
Yeah.
For the sequel, like do it. It's all to you. You want to write it? Go ahead. Yeah. Right.
And again, I mean, to her credit, we don't know the situation because it's kind of like this common courtesy in the WGA that you don't talk about these things. For all we know, she could have been heavily involved with the actual writing of the screenplay of the first movie. She could have literally had final draft open and been writing the dialogue. But a lot of times when you don't get the credit, and directors have to do an extra amount to get credit because they don't want directors swooping in to just take credit. You just don't talk about it. And because you're a director, I mean, you're directing ADR and on set and improv and all this other stuff. So you're involved in the story regardless. I mean, even if you didn't write the screenplay. So she might have just felt very comfortable taking over screenplay duties by the time they got to the next one. And she wrote it with Jeff Johns and Dave Callahan. Dave Callahan is a person that, it's funny, when I looked at the IMDb, it's like The Expendables was Dave Callahan's start. And then he did that Jean-Claude Van Damme series, the Meta series.
Oh, the Meta Jeff.
Which I kind of love that.
Yeah, he created that.
That's great.
I remember I saw the pilot and really liked it, but once it got to the series, I don't think I ever watched it.
It's pretty fun.
Yeah. So, and then apparently Patty Jenkins had a great relationship with Jeff Johns in the making of the movie. And Jeff Johns, of course, I don't know if he's the Feige of DC. He's more probably the Favreau of DC or something like that.
I feel like that's a great
that's a great comparison.
Yeah. Maybe the Filoni.
He's also a pretty divisive figure.
Yes.
I mean, I saw a lot of people on my feeds kind of blaming him. All the negative reactions. I saw people blaming Jeff Johns. So
he's definitely somebody people target.
Yeah,
people target for the DC universe in general. He's somebody that gets the credit and the blame, and of course, there's a lot of both to go around with these kind of movies.
Right.
So that's the storyline behind this. 3 writers: Patty Jenkins, the director; Jeff Johns, the Filoni, the Favreau, whatever you want to call him, and Dave Callahan, the Jean-Claude Van Damme fan. They're our writers.
In the interview that you listened to with Patty Jenkins, did she talk about the writing process at all?
Not really, but again, it's Marin, so it's a little different.
Gotcha.
You know, they don't really go into the movie as much. They might have hinted at it a little bit.
He probably doesn't even care about the movie, honestly.
I think that's the way.
I would assume. Yeah, he's not. He's not much into that type of stuff.
The one thing she did say, she chased being in superhero movies. So after she did Monster, you know, she got all the feminist, you know, women scripts and stuff like that. And she said that while all those came to her, she wasn't really interested in doing things specifically like that. Like, she really wanted to do a superhero movie. And again, it went back to her Richard Donner love and things like that.
Wow. Okay.
Where she could write about women, but she could write about women, not just about women, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But write about women in other genres and doing things.
Yeah.
So she said she actively pursued not only Wonder Woman, but the superhero genre for a long time. And she had been involved in a Wonder Woman project and then fell out of it and then came back in the Wonder Woman project.
I got, you know, and I know it's not exactly script, but when it comes to superhero movies, I hope that the reaction to this movie doesn't. I want more Patty Jenkins Wonder Woman. Like,
yeah, me too.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, the script problems aside, like what you just said, her passion for Richard Donner Superman comes through, and I want more of that. And I definitely want more Wonder Woman. So, like,
Patty Jenkins is the one thing that came off to me from the interview. I suggest you seek out Patty Jenkins interviews. She's really cool. I like her a lot. She like kind of comes from a punk rock background, and she did music videos and camera and stuff like that, and just kind of slowly worked her way into doing stuff she loved and continuing forward. So I got a great vibe from her. She's super cool.
Also, the question would be, is she a writer?
It's a valid question.
It's a valid question. It's not,
as we writers know, this stuff's harder than it looks. It definitely is harder than it looks, and I'm sure Patty Jenkins knows that too. But even especially on this big blockbuster level,
right?
It seems like it would be simple, like, oh, how can they screw that up? But there's so many ways you can screw it up.
And might not be anyone's particular fault, even, you know.
No. There's a lot of politics involved.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of expectation management, all that kind of stuff. So you gotta service, you know, a lot of different, you know, kings when you
lots of masters.
Also, I wonder if, because of the runtime, the runtime would have been different if they released it differently in a different time. Like, I don't know what happened since the last 10 months of the movie's cut. We have to treat the cut like it's the script, but I wonder if the cut would be about 10 to 20 minutes shorter if they weren't, if, you know, like HBO Max are like, just let it, whatever you want, that you can have 2.5 hours. Go ahead.
Right.
But if it was in theaters, they wouldn't. They maybe want to take that out, right?
Yeah, like I was wondering if that Christmas.
I thought the same thing. The Christmas scene. Did they tack that in?
If the Christmas epilogue, was shot post-pandemic with the plan to release it for Christmas, you know, leave that little bow on top of the movie at the end because they're putting it out at Christmas now. It almost feels like they had that ending and then they changed the season for when it was set for the release. But I don't know.
Digital snow.
Yeah.
They put coats on everybody. CGI coats. Yeah.
I think that might. I think that would have still been there. Maybe not Christmas though.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I feel like they might have had that moment, but they put a Christmas paint on it, right, Jamie?
That's right. Well, I mean, I think that's a good segue though to talk about the opening.
Yeah.
Because the opening is one place that online they've said that they tried to get her to cut the one of the openings, because it's kind of got a double bump opening, right? It's got like 2 back-to-back cold opens. And I'll tell you what it reminded me of a little bit. And I go back to this movie a lot for this. the third Indiana Jones movie. You know how that has that double bump, sort of? They're integrated more in that movie, but it's got the River Phoenix, kid opening, which just has the kid opening, but then it flashes forward to him on the boat, still fighting for the cross of Coronado.
Right.
So it's kind of got two things where either one could, in theory, be your opening. This one isn't as smooth as that. I mean, it's not like she goes from throwing that spear to trying to capture the spear or something like that.
No, but it
definitely feels like,
echoes.
it definitely feels like it's got the two opening issue.
Yeah.
What did you think?
But the opening is of her is for her character, and then there's the actual movie.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. What did you guys? Yeah. What were you gonna say, Jamie?
Sorry.
What was the question? No, it's okay, Bob.
It's not so much of a question, but honestly, my gut when I watched it. Now, I have to say, and I understand why they did the first opening, the island, because that's the only part that reminds you of the first movie, and the part everybody really loved about the first movie, which was the island and the women. When I watched it, I wasn't very engaged in that, and there are a couple reasons why I wasn't engaged. One, it didn't feel like, I don't know, I wasn't engaged with the goal and the stakes, and there was no tension for me. It was just like I was watching
that's what we're specifically talking about.
Yeah, the kind of Ninja Warrior.
That's exactly what I was like. This is Ninja Warrior,
and it to me it felt just like a demo reel or something. You know what I mean? It just didn't feel like, I didn't care about that girl winning the tournament or anything, and I kind of knew she would win if she, it was just.
I think the first movie already, it's well covered ground with the first movie that Diana was special among her people, so we don't need to be reproven that. But it's
especially for 11 minutes.
Yeah, it's 11 minutes.
It's also there. It's really just about what Robin Wright says to her, right? That's what the scene is. That's the important part of that scene, because that's supposed to echo at the end, right?
Yes. Yeah, and it
that
really...
aside from that, I'm saying the intentions. You don't need to see her do Ninja Warrior. You just need to have a moment where Robin Wright says the thing about truth.
To me, that was part of the problem. Was once she said that, it felt like instead that was justifying the scene as opposed to setting up what was to come. You know what I mean?
Right.
Almost like it was retroactive. Like, well, why is this scene here? We'll have her say the theme in the end.
The only thing that the theme, and then you see a glimpse of the armor on the statue, but like you don't really need to see that glimpse for many reasons. I guess for me, like, it's another one of those things that what I was just saying with the Christmas epilogue at the end. They released that before the movie was out. That 11-minute prologue was on YouTube, right?
I didn't know that.
So is it possible that it was simply a marketing tool? Because it reminds people of the first movie and what they love about the first movie. It's a weird screenwriting question to talk about.
It's also kind of we're going to talk about tone in a bit, but I think tonally it's a really bad move, because this movie is like decidedly trying to remove itself.
Right, yeah.
From the first movie, and then it's like, remember what you like? It's not
again
this.
that mall scene, like it or like this movie or not. For me, I like the tone of the mall scene.
The mall scene's, I'm all about it.
It doesn't stay that way. Though.
No,
like if it had kept that balance, I really think it would have helped. Like,
but that was the intended tone, I think, of the movie. What it wanted.
I know.
Yeah, the mall scene.
I agree.
Right.
Yes.
Like that's what it wanted.
And it's great. It's great.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's like that prologue is consequential at all, and it's so expensive too, which is weird. Like, it's weird that they would put so much money into something, and there wasn't a conversation, or maybe there was. Like you said, Jamie, you don't know which masters they're serving in these situations, but like somebody at some point had to say, like, why do we need to spend all the money on this? So, like, what is the purpose?
And they probably gave Patty Jenkins the free will do whatever she wanted, right? I mean,
Yeah.
We're kind of dancing around two things though with the cold open, and this is why I wanted to bring it up. One is tone. You know, where does this one sit? Where does this movie sit? Like I said, it feels like it wants to sit somewhere in the Raimi Spider-Man kind of era, maybe even a little bit, even I don't know if it's sillier than that or right about the same. You know, it feels like
it's hard to judge because you get farther into the movie and then it's like, you know, we're dealing with like the weird stuff with the foreign countries and everything. All right, well, this is not trying to be silly anymore, and then it gets silly again, and it's very odd.
Yeah, like her earnest speech in the end that goes on and on and on, where she's saying it almost sounds like a perfume commercial. You know, it's like truth is beautiful, and everyone, all we need is truth, and the world was beautiful as it was. It's like, what are you talking about? Like that. I couldn't really see that in a Spider-Man movie unless it was like Bruce Campbell doing it and we were supposed to laugh at him. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like that part, it does get a little overly earnest, but in some ways, I guess Richard Donner got overly earnest toward the end as well.
I think the Richard Donner movies don't hold up for modern cynicism with most people.
Yeah.
So
it
tracks for Patty's intentions.
If that's what it was.
It tracks, but we're still talking about the cold open though. Tonally, why doesn't it hit? Is what you're saying?
Yeah, well, I'm just kind of expanding that discussion because the cold open is. There's two things with the cold open. There's tone because it gets serious, the kind of goofy, to whatever, which I guess is in keeping with the movie. But then also the second big thing with the cold opening to me is it totally screws up the pacing of the movie because we're 17 minutes into the movie before we're done teaser.
Yeah.
18 minutes. So we don't even know what the movie is until, because really it's when Diana walks into the Smithsonian. That's when we're really in setup mode. Like, here's what she's doing. Here's who she is. Here are her friends.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So
the mall scene, as awesome as it is not story.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I think this is where we get our first kind of screenwriting lesson. Like, people make fun of the Save the Cats of the world and stuff because they say page 12, that's the catalyst. But when I read bad scripts, when I read scripts from people that are kind of new to it, that are learning, this is one of the problems is they'll be on page 30 or something, and they'll still be introducing characters, setting up the world, where they work, who their friends are, why they're sad. And I'm 30 pages into something that I want to be done in an hour or whatever. That's kind of what this movie does. Now, this movie has an advantage because we've seen the original. We love the stars. We know who Wonder Woman is. So we're excited and we're waiting for things to get started. But it also kind of works against it because we know all those things.
Right.
As well.
We don't need that. Yeah.
So we're kind of like, what's this movie's going to be about? Who's going to be the villain? You know, as an audience, we're asking all those questions. And that's what those structure diagrams do for us. That's why on page 12, you're supposed to put the catalyst. Now, whether the page 12 it happens or page 15, it's okay. But when it doesn't come to page 50 or page 40, this is what you see in amateur screenplays and ones that typically don't work for pacing, or independent ones that work for all the wrong reasons.
To the rule, though. I mean,
of course, always.
But Wonder Woman 84.
We've talked about those exceptions on the show, even. But in this case,
Wonder Woman 84 isn't Rocky, though. There's a difference.
Yes,
There's a difference. Yeah,
exactly.
It occasionally works. It occasionally works, like an independent film or some, great movies. Sometimes it works. This is one of the ones where it feels like you took the risk and it didn't really pay off. To me, I mean, that's my opinion. This feels like what I get from amateur scripts when I go back and say, look, your story's not starting to page 50.
Right.
Cut it back.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the one thing I wanted to ask Jamie, especially, is that because I think it's pretty obvious, but you always talk about your Batman scale of tone. I know we're kind of pushing it back a little bit, but where do you think this sits on your Batman tonal scale of movies? It's hard. It's a little bit hard to place.
So just to give you the scale, like we always say, Adam West might be at the 1, and Nolan might be at an 8 or something like that. And there's probably still some movie that'll be a 10 that's super serious or something. I think the Schumacher movies might be a 3 or a 4. So I think it probably
3.
falls in that range, the 3 or the 4, if I had to put it on that range. I don't know. What do you think? Does that make sense?
I think it would sit somewhere between Schumacher and Batman Returns, in the middle somewhere. You know what I mean? Like, it's hard to, like what Jimmy said, like what it wants to be versus what it is, and then you kind of put it in the center there.
I think it wants to be in the middle of the Nolan and the Schumacher, but it tends to instead keep going to the 3, right? So like that's like what we've talked about with this tool is like you kind of can teeter between, if you set your tone scale right when you're writing and you're coming up with ideas and you say, okay, I'm gonna make this a 3 on the self-awareness humor scale, and so you can have things that are on the 2 and you can have things that are on the 4, but when you start introducing things that are on the 7 or 8 of seriousness, like the geopolitical stuff, right? Or you start having things that are on the 1, you know, like the Adam West shit, which there is some things here and there that hit that 1, then it makes you as an audience go like, what the hell am I watching and how am I supposed to feel about it? Like, and I think often this movie gives you, for every moment where it has the mall scene that tonally feels just right and feels like what they're trying to do, they're doing. You have the moments where, like, you know, there's like like stuff happening in the Middle East that's like super serious and sort of timely, oddly, and like just betrays all that fun, right? And so, like, I think it's trying to be like a 4, and but those 1s and 7s that hit here and there throw it off. That's what I feel like.
It bounces too hard in both directions, is what you're saying.
Yeah, often what I do is, you know, because I get tone is like, genre and tone are like the hardest things to nail as a writer, especially for people who are just starting out. And I read a lot of scripts that like don't know, they don't even have a number, right? But the easy way to help them figure out that number is to say, well, what I'll do is I'll break it up, right? And I'll say, here's all these scenes that are tonally completely different than the rest of the script. And you've got this scene on page 5 that is it's a complete, like, you know, you've got like extreme violence in a movie that's like otherwise fun. You're showing like a dog getting like bleeding in an otherwise like hilarious comedy. And I'm like, so then I'll point out those scenes and say like, is this the scene? Is this the way you want this movie to feel, with the dog bleeding while we're also supposed to be laughing? Or is it the goofy, like, you know, dude slips on a banana peel? Like, which one is it? And usually it's one or the other, right? Somebody's like, oh, I want it to be like insanely serious. And you say, okay, well, then you have to recalibrate the banana peel scenes to match that. So I don't think this thing is calibrated. The tone is all over the place for me.
I think that brings us, that's a really good segue, the way you said that, Jimmy, into pacing.
Yeah.
That's you know what I mean? Because like, as far as the tone not being calibrated, how about the pacing?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, in addition to that cold opening and things like that, the other big thing I always check with pacing, and this is the number 1 checkpoint with pacing. It's like my first checkpoint is usually, you know, some people would say the catalyst and all that, and it all goes into it. But my first checkpoint is the lock-in. And the thing I define, you know,
explain what a lock-in is for everybody listening.
Yeah, how I define a lock-in, the lock-in moment is, it's kind of like when you have a log line. The key to a good log line is that a log line has a hero, a goal, an obstacle, and stakes. So Indiana Jones trying to get the Lost Ark, Nazis in the way, the stakes of the world. Okay, that's kind of a good log line. Usually the lock-in moment has at least the hero, the goal, and the obstacle, and usually has the stakes as well. So your hero is on a quest to do something. There's something in the way, and here's the big problem.
And this is for your arc plot movies that we're talking about.
Yeah,
This is for the main arch plot movies. Again, if you're in Sundance mode, if you're talking about Lady Bird or Moonlight or something, it's going to be a different thing. But these tentpole blockbuster, the cheeseburgers, the tentpoles, the Pixar movies, all these things. This is typically how it is, and then there's some variation. There's some spectrum for sure. So pacing, a big part of pacing, at least your first checkpoint, is when you hit this lock-in. A slow burn movie might not hit it till really late. But most blockbusters and things hit it, relatively speaking, around the half-hour mark. The Save the Cats of the world will tell you to hit it at the 25-minute mark. But right around minute 30, a slower movie might be 35. A slow burn movie hits it at 40 and 50, but they're really slow. And unless you're doing I'm trying to think of what a good slow burn movie is. But unless you're doing something like Hereditary, actually Hereditary was what I was trying to think of, and I couldn't think of the title. It's hilarious that you said that. Unless you're doing something like Hereditary, that almost the purpose is the creep and the dread and stuff like that, and you're hitting at 50, which are risky movies to write unless you really execute anyway. You really should be hitting at 25, 30. When do you think it hit the lock-in? Because it's very tricky, and I have kind of two theories on this that it'll talk about goals and plans a little bit. But go ahead.
I don't want to embarrass myself, so I'm going to let Jimmy go first here, but I kind of have an idea.
There's really no 100%
it's a hard.
right
I
answer.
couldn't. It's hard to figure out, honestly.
So it brings up another question we've debated, and I don't think we've really debated. It's more like we've all mutually agreed. In Groundhog Day, we talked about this, and in Back to the Future, we talked about this. What is the lock-in? Is the lock-in the moment that the audience knows there's a problem that needs to be fixed? Or is it the moment that the character knows that because in Groundhog Day, there's an entire sequence that we know he's stuck in the same day and he doesn't. And there's like 15 minutes after what we define the lock-in of Groundhog Day when he wakes up on the same day, and we know that for 15 minutes before he does. Marty is stuck in 1955, and that happens 15 minutes before he realizes he's stuck in 1955. So for both of those movies, the lock-in, we had mutually kind of discussed that, like, the lock-in was when we knew that there was a problem, that because we feel the stakes, we feel the urgency, we know what the goal is, even if the character doesn't yet.
Yep.
So in this movie, it does that.
Yep.
The audience, I believe, and I think it's pretty obvious. The lock-in is when Max steals the stone from the office. That is 45 minutes into the movie.
Now, right. I was actually going to argue a little bit with that, but
okay, let's hear it.
Because for my guess, I had two lock-ins in my brain. One was when Steve returns, which is, I think,
which is right around that same.
It's not that far away from what you're talking about, Jimmy.
They're sort of like a 1-2 punch.
Yeah, like, and that kind of. The only reason I would say that is because that's kind of when Diana knows something's up, even though she likes it. She knows something's wrong. You know, the new world type of whatever you guys called it before.
Right. The upside down world.
The upside down world has come into play.
Yeah, but
the real lock-in, like the concrete lock-in to me, oddly feels like when they were studying the artifact, which is sadly extremely far into the movie.
Right, and if in a purist sense, and this is the problem, I think, because all of these are not perfect. They're not, and sometimes they're not perfect. Sometimes they're a little messy. But because none of these are perfect, that's why the pacing takes another hit. So even on top of the fact that it's 45 minutes late, we're like, okay, even if you say, hey, we know what the tension is. We know there's going to be a showdown. We're still waiting for the showdown. And now we have to wait even longer for the showdown. And to your point, Bob, like, this is the weird part about this movie is there's different ways I could see, like, if you really wanted to argue this in the court of law sort of thing, you could almost take it from the villain's perspective and say, oh, this is a movie like a liar, liar. It's liar, liar, right? It's a guy who loves his kid. He wants to be successful. He makes a wish. It comes true. And for him, when he becomes the thing and gets the powers, it's Bruce Almighty.
It's Bruce. Dude has Bruce Almighty arc. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. It's totally an 80s kind of thing. Well, I don't know. Bruce Almighty, I guess, was 90s. Was it?
Yeah. Bruce Almighty was late 90s. Yeah.
But it has that kind of, if you almost viewed it from that, it could, the lock-in could be Max, for him then.
I kind of said at the beginning, but Max Lord, he's kind of the main character of the movie we're not being shown. Right. And Wonder Woman is incidental to the entire movie. But his movie we could talk about differently if it was Max Lord the movie.
Yeah. And then
the lock-in would be different. You're right. Yeah.
And then Kristen Wiig, she kind of has her own movie going on too. That's a little like a Bruce Almighty movie.
Right.
She made a wish. She becomes a thing. She can walk in heels. She can take her glasses off, whatever.
Whatever.
So she can do that. And she's having that kind of thing. And they all kind of hit around the same point. And then Diana has her own story. So here's the problem. If you said that was the lock-in for Diana, well, the movie would be about her bringing back a dead person to life. Like if the movie were about that, if we were going to sit back and go, oh, I know what this movie's about. It's about, let's take away Wonder Woman. It's about a woman who brings back her dead lover from the past and now gets another chance with him.
Right.
That's the movie that locks into at that point. But that's not the Wonder Woman movie, really.
No.
And that's to your point why the real lock-in, the purest lock-in, doesn't come for much later. Though I would agree that it's when the villain, because we've watched enough superhero movies, we know they're going to collide and fight. But it's messy. And that's why messy. That's why pacing is like, okay, he made the wish. Now what's his plan? What's his plan? What's so scary about that? So what?
Right.
It's a hard one to tackle because you just said it, Jamie. Like, it's kind of 3 movies.
Mm-hmm.
It's 3 movies, and I don't say that lightly. Like, it really is 3 movies of material smashed into one.
And instead of being cohesive and having a really smooth connective fiber, they're all competing with each other.
Yeah.
For what we should care about most, instead of trying to make them equally important.
Right. And I mean, this is another writing instructive thing. So when you have stories and you're making your log line and you have a hero goal, obstacle, stakes, and you decide, I don't think that's what this movie is totally doing, but let's say you decide you have 3 stories going on. It's not just one hero. You have 3 hero goal, obstacle, stakes. So you can't make a log line. Well, here's the problem. Then you have to set up each one of those stories.
Yeah,
right.
Every one of those stories needs their own homework and play when they all get it,
and
right?
That's what they get, and that's what takes 45 minutes.
That's what takes 45 minutes. And then you tack on 2 cold openings in front of that.
Yeah.
And that's really not what the movie's about either. They're not really 3 stories. It's really about something else that's going to happen later on. That's when you run into pacing problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Pure and
also
simple.
Also the reason that we're having such trouble finding theme, right?
Yeah, because they all have their different themes. Each one of those ABC stories
has a different theme. And
I think that's why we get to something really vague, like truth is all we have.
Right.
Yeah.
But you could look at each individual story of Max, Diana, and Barbara, and they all have a pretty clear theme that they're going for, right?
Probably if I didn't do that, I didn't diagnose it, but I'm sure they would be easily trackable,
right?
On individually on their own, but how they speak to the whole piece, they're sort of competing because they're not really working in tandem.
That's what I'm saying. It's like a Thunderdome of themes.
Yes.
it's 3 themes enter, no themes leave. It's like, okay,
Bob, I'm going to use that note in the future with my clients. This is a Thunderdome
of theme. Yeah, right. It's a fight to the death. Yeah,
because you're absolutely right. The 3 different themes are very, one is about greed and taking from others to get what you want. Kristen Wiig's, hers, I don't quite know like in the surface, she's not really asking for anything that horrible.
Hers is like self-confidence,
self-love. It's about self-love,
confidence,
self-love,
actualization, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And Diana's is obviously about, reckoning with the past and, love and loss.
And learning the cost that comes with having everything you want. Something like that.
And truth covers most of those, but it's so vague.
Only like love covers most of those, or something, or selflessness or whatever. It's so vague that it's hard. But honestly, when you have three things, like 3 tracks and storylines, a lot of times you're using these very broad themes to kind of encompass them all. It can be a weakness of this kind of material in some ways.
Yeah, it doesn't help.
It doesn't help. It makes your life harder, basically, as a storyteller. I think.
It's a difficult one to talk about for such a silly movie to actually break it down.
I'm just scanning through our notes here on this thing. I think that we were talking about, like, the villain also has a very abstract plan.
Yeah.
It kind of evolves, right? He's kind of improvising it on the fly.
Which he's my favorite part of the movie, like, easily. And I couldn't tell you what the hell's going on with him. Which is, the anarchic part of my brain loves it, but I'm also like, I don't know why he's doing what he's doing, other than the stuff he's screaming at his son.
Or
how it works.
Right. That is that's a whole other discussion.
Right.
But
it's so loaded.
So I see this a lot, and Jamie, I wanna circle back with Diane. We can talk about Max's goal and Diana's goal sort of at the same time here.
Yeah, sure.
So I see this a lot in amateur scripts, which is, and I feel bad that I'm comparing this to amateur scripts, but it is what it is.
Hey, experts, I make amateur moves all the time, and I've been doing it for a while. So.
Me too.
Oh yeah, tear apart. Anyone listening can tear apart everything we do.
So,
yes, absolutely.
so absolutely. So I call this an empire without a Death Star. That is the note I use, which is, you have a villain. He's doing a ton of bad shit. We can track that bad shit that he's doing. He's driven, and things keep happening because of his actions. But you can't put your finger on what his end goal is, what he's specifically. You can't. It's not filmable, right? His goal is to grant as many wishes as possible, and the reward he seeks is more. That's all it is.
Now,
more.
Let me interrupt,
right?
Because this is where the movie actually gets more confusing. Is that there's a small thing that it was either edited out or left in, where he has this health obsession.
Yeah,
we're talking about we talked about comic obsessions or villain obsessions before, but his obsession on the side of this whole thing is his own physical health.
It almost feels like there's a draft, or even scenes they shot where he actually is dying or something,
or maybe even becoming the monster, or something.
Or he wants to be, or he just wants to be. Immortality is his goal.
Yeah, like that's what I mean.
Immortal.
It almost feels like because he's got he's taking vitamins. When we meet him,
and
he's,
health shakes.
like you said, he's got health. He's got these never defined health issues. And it almost feels like there's a draft of this movie where what was motivating him was that he's dying.
Yeah, he's got like 6 months to live, or something.
And then they
just
kept,
take his shortcut.
They kept all the goofiness that was grown out of that, but they removed the actual motivation for those antics.
The thing is with Max Lord, and I'm saying this as somebody who loves it, is that it's the health thing. Then it's also like he doesn't want his son to view him as a loser.
Right.
And then he also wants like ultimate supreme power on Earth.
Right.
And it's like that's three different very separate things, right? Like
And so I think the movie is doing its best to make it a filmable goal, right? They keep changing what that looks like, when all they needed was to create this sort of image. Because I mean, the dude's got a vision board on his desk. Like they could have just given us a vision board for the, like, from Max's standpoint that he was trying to reach. When you have an empire without a Death Star, like, the reason that we are able to root for a hero when there's a villain, when there's like an arc villain, is because we have a visual thing that we can root for the hero to stop specifically, right? And that is, like, we want Luke to blow up the Death Star, right?
Yeah.
If you take away the Death Star, then
how does Luke win?
How does Luke win? What does victory look like? So since there's no visual victory for Diana in stopping him, it keeps you from being able to feel anything about his goal and plan.
By the way, this is another pacing issue, because when you don't have that, you feel like things could go on forever. Right. Because he could just keep going on and on and on and on.
Right.
And we don't have this feel like it's focusing or narrowing in on something.
Right.
So that's another pacing issue. That's another thing where you're like, I wish this movie would kick into gear and kind of pull me along for the ride. It's like you're surfing, but you can't catch the wave. You know? Right. It's really
if I could also, Jimmy, you said the thing about the visual goal, which in these types of movies, the one trope that everyone makes fun of is there's always like a sky beam.
Yeah.
The sky beam is a visual goal that always signifies, like, when that beam is gone, everything is done. It's going to be okay, right? And I find this movie actually, with that in mind, it's funny because there's no sky beam, but they still found a way to put a beam.
They did
for him
put the
to
beam
stand in. If it's not in the sky, it's on the character instead. It's like it kind of wants to have a sky beam, but then it finds a way to make it more confusing.
It understands it needs that, but it doesn't understand why it needs that.
Like I'm just saying, it's also funny. The visual task has been moved inward to make it even that much more confusing. So, like, Max doesn't know what he wants.
so like, oh man. So with that in mind, like, it's sort of like this, the goal and stakes, they all go around. Jamie, if I didn't mean to cut you off, if I cut you off at all.
Sorry if I did.
Like, what is Diana's overall goal? Like,
I think you have to ask when.
When?
Because it's either keeping Steve forever or getting vengeance.
It's weird
for what she
right
has to deal with.
Right after Steve Trevor, she kind of gets this idea like, we got to get to Max Lord to stop him because this could be dangerous.
Right.
It's like it's kind of generic, like what she has. It's just an overall sense that this could be this power could be dangerous in a mortal's hands. So it's like, we got to track him down. So I guess the theory is her goal at that point. I mean, it's very loose. Is to get the wishing thing back, the MacGuffin back.
Right. Yeah.
But because we as an audience already know that he's become the wishing thing, it's not a great goal to give the character.
Your hero, right?
Right. Yeah.
You don't want
the ahead
audience
of her
to be ahead of a superhero.
I was thinking, like, maybe they should, to fix this in editing, maybe like when she's on top of the car and he says you're looking at it, that's when you could edit in the flashback of him becoming one with it or something. Yeah. So that it's hard
just like hearing you explain it that way, Jamie. It really makes it. It's another reason why it feels like the movie lags, right? Because like you feel smarter than her, and you're not supposed to. But
I hate to say it, but it's another pacing issue because now we just need her to catch up with us before the movie can get going.
It makes the whole car chase sequence, like, we know that we already know the end of the car chase will give her nothing.
Right. Exactly.
Like,
Jamie, I thought this was a good time, and I'll bounce off of this to give the audience a refresher, and for anyone who hasn't heard it before, of your exercise that you give your students about defining a goal.
Okay. You want me to do it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I usually try to do when they're at the conception phase, at the log line phase, and they're coming up with their hero goal, obstacle, stakes, again, the log line, By the way, when I have them come up with that, I'm less interested in the log line because people get caught in the poetry of log lines. And I'm really more interested in them saying, who's the hero? What's the goal? And whether they come up with a log line or not is almost extra credit. But when they come up with a goal, instead of like to be happy, which is kind of like what the villain's goal is in this, right? To get is just whatever, it's like very vague, to be happy, to be rich, whatever it is. Instead, I try to give them something that they could take a picture of the person almost holding the trophy or slaying the dragon or something they could either draw in a picture or they could find a picture on the net and show it and say, here's the hero achieving the goal. They crossed the finish line. They won the trophy. They did they blew up the Death Star. They made it back to the Twin Pines Mall in 1980, whatever. You can take a picture of those things. Dorothy waking up at home. Those are the kind of things you can take a picture of. Much harder to take a picture of, I want to be happy, which is kind of what our hero's goal is here. I want to be great.
For a lot
successful.
of it.
Yeah.
For a lot of it.
Until later, it clicks into gear.
It's like the movie's about curing Diana's loneliness.
So yeah, which is an intangible. I mean, having Steve there is the visual, right? Forever, having Steve is that visual, and so reverse.
Well, one more thing. So the happiness and stuff like that. A lot of people say, well, I want my story to be about somebody achieving happiness. And I get that. You should have that. That's an internal goal.
Yeah.
But that's the internal goal. So what you have to find is what they think will make them happy. That's the key.
What is the...
It's a visual medium, so...
How do you get there?
How do you get there?
How do you get... What is
and we need to see it.
And we need to see it, right? And that, like I talk... Well, the way I try to conceptualize it for my clients is happiness is a reward. It's not a goal. And it's a reward gained by achieving a goal. So a lot of people confuse reward with goals. Right. And reward is what you gain. It's not what you like in a horror movie. Survival is not the goal. Survival is the reward. In Predator, how he gains survival is like setting up traps in the jungle and fighting the predator to the death. And that is the goal. You blow up
the Death Star, you end fascism. Ending fascism is the reward.
Right. So, but a lot of people in their log lines, they skip over what the goal is. They don't figure that out, and they put the reward and fascism as the goal. And so those are two separate things. So in this movie, you look at like we talked about like in the Matrix, Neo's goal is to gain control of the Matrix. Like that's the actual goal. To gain control of the Matrix. In this movie, how she actually defeats the villain is she gets everyone to renounce their wish. That is the goal, right? But like that's the actual action that Diana takes in the end to succeed.
Now, the confusing nature of the movie makes me disagree with you a little bit. Here's where I don't understand, and it is a script problem. Max renouncing his wish makes him no longer the stone, thus renouncing all wishes. So the scene of all the people around the world renouncing their wishes is unnecessary.
But it's a means to an end.
I know,
to get
but
him to
you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Her goal is for him to renounce the one wish that caused all the wishes.
Right.
But the movie doesn't even act like that's important enough.
Yeah. So I went back, and Jamie and I were chatting about this before, trying to figure out where the fuck it's defined, right? And there's one scene, and it is 93 minutes in when they're in the Galaxy Records.
Yeah.
And they're looking through the book. Chris Pine says, Steve says, if we destroy him, all the wishes go back, or if everyone renounces their wish. And then that's 93 minutes into the movie.
It feels like something that should be a midpoint, or
Right.
or a break into two.
To be fair,
That's get Marty
to be
back
fair,
to the future.
93 minutes into this movie is sort of the midpoint. It's a long movie.
It's 62%.
It's kind of the lock-in in some ways.
So that's oddly could be you could argue that's the lock-in, right?
Absolutely. It's the first time they really have a definitive goal.
Right.
We have to kill this guy, or otherwise bad things going to happen, or whatever.
Exactly. And then the next reason we don't feel that, like why Bob's confused, why you and I had to discuss what the hell the goal was before we started this podcast, why I had to go back and look at the movie again to try to figure it out, is because for the rest of the movie, she's not taking steps to do that. Mm-hmm. She's not trying to figure out, well, how the hell can I get everybody to renounce their wish if I can't figure out how to destroy him? There's no status updates toward that goal.
That's what I'm saying. Like, if she, I'm not trying to rewrite it, but shouldn't she have been like, what if we get Max to renounce his wish?
Exactly.
And then that would make the speech at the end have like the goal of her basically talking to the guy. Like,
there's no trial and error of that.
Right.
She just shows up and does it in the end with the lasso.
Right.
Like on her first try. And that's this movie does. They
don't define it for the audience at all.
What'd you say?
They don't tell They don't tell us, the audience, that she really just needs Max to renounce his one wish.
In fact, I think it's I think they're trying to make it a twist in that moment that's what she's doing. Like, they don't show you. It's like the real voila. What she was doing was getting everybody to renounce their wish by broadcasting her big speech to the whole world, right?
Right.
But they're not showing you that she's doing it. And since they haven't reminded us that that's her goal, we're not like rooting for her to achieve that specifically, so it feels like nothing. It's just like, what's happening? Oh, she's saying something cool and it looks cool.
Yeah.
Well, even then, Jimmy, I'd argue that I don't actually know what happened there.
Yeah.
Because the people
I agree.
The people are staring at screens that are just gold.
Yeah, I know.
I'm like, well, what are they hearing her talk?
Yes.
What are they seeing? I don't know.
He's talking, but no one's hearing what he's saying. They're hearing what she's saying because of the lasso.
Yeah,
but I still think him renouncing his wish is what ends the con. That's the Death Star blowing up. It's not everyone around the world renouncing their wish. It's him.
It's both together.
Yeah, maybe.
It was very confusing. Like,
super confusing.
The whole lasso around the ankle thing. It was like,
yeah,
because I guess it was kind of also a callback to when she showed
Steve.
Yeah.
That was the setup.
There was a setup and payoff there, sort of. Yeah.
Right.
Well, they tried. They tried.
Yeah.
My gut said while we were watching Gal give that weird perfume speech that didn't mean much, the audience was somehow magically seeing their truth or something.
Mm-hmm. Yes, all the people watching the TVs. Yes.
Right. So, but I'm just guessing because
I think I think you're right. You're right.
It's extremely. It's like you can see what they want. And it just doesn't
what they're trying
to do, and then
intent versus execution. Yeah,
right.
Honestly, this is one of the dangers of HBO Max, because by this point I was just like, I'm gonna go look on Twitter. And I was just sitting.
I'll be honest, I actually really love the whole ending because of Pedro going insane and staring into a beam that's touching people. That makes no sense. He looks like he's in an 80s horror movie at that moment, like the lights shining on him.
Yeah.
It's like it's just insane, but yeah, it doesn't hold together.
But hey, my wife loved it. She was digging it. So
I'm with her. I was digging it too, regardless of if I understood any of it.
She was shocked when she asked me what I thought of it, and I was like, yeah, it was a mess. And she was like, really? What? I was like, yeah. I was like, that was a mess. But anyway, yeah. So where were we with all this?
If we're going, there's two more things I wanted to talk about under goals and plans.
Okay.
Unless you guys had further to go with
we didn't talk about stakes, so that's something that Jamie does that sort of also go into the logline discussion?
Yeah, I mean, it's just we don't know what her stakes are.
You mean Diana's personal stakes or the stakes of the world stakes?
A little bit of both,
Yeah.
because we really don't realize what the bigger stakes are to much later in the movie, and that affects goals and plans, and again, pacing,
urgency, tension.
Right. I honestly, it took me. I probably checked out a little bit, but the first viewing through, I didn't really see where they brought up like her vulnerability, that she was losing her powers, because it always seemed like she was super powered. It wasn't like Superman 2 or Spider-Man, Spider-Man 3. I
also, in defense of them, I also feel like the first movie and in general the DCEU Wonder Woman has a big problem with powers in general.
Yeah.
So, like, the fact, I still think it's dumb that she's not bulletproof. Like, let's get there, because it's stupid that Wonder Woman's not bulletproof. She should be able to take Superman. That's just my opinion. So when she lost her powers, Jamie, I'm like, when she gets hit with a bullet before, wouldn't she bleed too? I don't understand.
Yes. So
you haven't defined what she can do before all this enough.
Right.
Even with the other movie, you haven't defined it enough.
Right. Upon rewatch, so like I didn't understand what was happening at all, like the first time I watched it with the powers, right?
Yeah.
And so the first problem is this. She starts losing her powers before it's ever vocalized or defined for the audience that is the stakes for the wish.
Right. So I just thought that was part of her norm at that point.
Right, yeah. So like the movie, upon watching it the second time, I was trying to go in and see the evidence they give us, right? How does the movie think it communicates this, right? So the first time is she goes to the lock, right? And when I was watching it, I just thought it was a really lame scene. Like, why are we having Wonder Woman break a lock, right? And then she breaks the lock and Steve says, well, that's a strong lock.
Yeah, right.
Second time I realized that is the movie trying to show us that she's losing her power.
Yes. Yeah.
She can't break the lock. But for me, that didn't come across
it didn't,
at all.
Yeah, the first time I watched it, I was like, what the fuck is happening right now? As an editor, I was like, why would you leave that in?
So like all they had to do was have Wonder Woman. Yeah, why would
you leave that in? It's not even a joke. Okay.
And they even like tried to make a joke out of it, like by saying strong lock.
Right.
Like, but my response to that was like, well, yeah, I guess that was some fucking adamantium or something. Like,
yeah, wouldn't you put something like her staring at her hand or something?
I know. So all she had to do was go like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, why can't I break this lock, right? Like, I can crush guns with my bare hands. What's going on here? But instead, she just looks like, well, that sucks.
That's one of those things where the second time through was better because I understood what the movie was trying to do. So, like, that scene kind of holds more water the second time. Where I'm like, she doesn't have her powers. All right.
It's such a simple thing to get right. It's such a simple thing to get right. And then, so the problem with that is, and if we did know that she was losing her powers there, immediately the next scene, she makes the plane invisible. Right? The most powerful thing we've ever seen her do.
Yeah, that's the part that totally confused me.
Right?
Like, she has these new powers when she's supposedly losing her powers.
So you're how are you supposed to feel that she's losing her powers when she's doing something cool and new that she's never been able to achieve before, and she's laughing joyously while she's doing it?
Also,
no urgency or fear.
Right.
And that comes with its own problem of like setup and payoff too. Where the setup for the invisible jet is actually in the scene where she's like, oh, I did it with a cup.
Yeah, that's why not just show us that?
Why not that happen at the beginning of the movie?
Cup,
right.
Like she's sitting alone by herself and like there's no Steve and she's sad and the guy comes to clear the plate and like he clears the plate and then like the cup shows up and he's like, oh, I forgot that.
Right.
Like
right.
It's so easy. But anyway, after all this, on page 91, I always talk in pages, 91 minutes, she finally learns, we hear from the audience standpoint, that the monkey's paw, make-a-wish, lose what's most precious to you stakes. That's when it's defined for the audience, 91 minutes in. Meanwhile, we've had 2 or 3 scenes where the movie's trying to show us her losing power, and it's not coming across because those stakes have never been clarified for the audience. Right? Mm-hmm. And then it gets even crazier. Like it gets even more like, the only thing that is clear is like he makes a one-off line like, "You're getting weaker, Diana. You can't do this." Right? But like we're seeing no evidence of this that's clear.
Can I also throw something else out too? Lore has something to do with writing. I feel like the movies go a long way, especially with the opening that we talked about, Jamie, to say that her disposition physically are not superpowers. Wonder Woman is naturally that strong. So it's not like she was imbued with those powers. So what the Wish is taking away from her is her natural state.
Good point.
It's confusing.
It's a confusing. I'm sorry, I didn't. But you understand why that confuses me too, and that would confuse viewers.
Right, and then like in the end, like she says, "I renounce my wish," and she like runs super fast, and starts flying. But like we never saw a moment where she slowed down. Right, like she got her ass kicked by Barbara, but Barbara's wish was to be as powerful as her. So how are we supposed to understand that someone as powerful as her beating her up is a sign of her losing her power? So it's one of these things where, like, you think of Back to the Future, Marty's stakes are his existence, and from time to time, as they're trying to enact their plan, we see him disappearing from the picture, and we see him like losing his hand, it's disappearing, and no one needs to say a goddamn thing. And you understand. And all this movie needed to do was like a few easy to understand. Like she tries to run fast, and like some old lady in a walker's like faster than her. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's so they could have so easily. So I think it's a good lesson. And I read a lot of scripts where the stakes are supposed to be there and things happen that are supposed to communicate those stakes, but it's not clear because like we're not being shown what the movie is trying to show us there. So they're really intangible stakes from as far as her losing her power. Like you said, to the point that Jamie, like you're like, wait, that's what was happening this whole time? Like I didn't even know. So
yeah, no, I totally agree, man. It's a visual medium.
Yeah.
And it wasn't visually conveyed that she's losing powers. She also, you're dealing with a hero that has to dodge bullets. So if she gets hit by a bullet and bleeds, I'm also like, is that new?
Yeah,
she always would bleed, right?
Understand. We've seen her bleeding in previous movies. She just gets up and keeps kicking ass.
Right.
Yeah, so it's like,
the one thing I wanted to bring up here that I kind of wanted your input, and if this is stupid, we can move on quick. But does this feel Jamie is now Mr. Save the Cat TV master, so this is a great question. Does this movie to you feel like it's TV writing? It feels like it's written like a TV show. It's just, I don't the only reason I say that is because of how incidental Wonder Woman is and how much Max Lord feels like a freak of the week or even a freak of the season. Does that make any sense to you guys? If it holds no water, we can move on.
I was waiting for Jamie's contemplating. I like watching.
It just feels like television.
My only thing is, I think there are a lot of movies that feel that way. It's just
that's true.
The big, because you could stretch a lot of super like the Flash TV series Freak of the Week into a movie if you wanted to. So that's the only reason I'm not sure, because most movies do introduce like a villain, and then like, is it any different than, let's say, Spider-Man 2 or something? I don't. That's my.
Yeah.
That's where I can't quite get.
It didn't feel like Freak of the Week for me. They're so. It felt like a season of a show jam packed into one movie.
I could see a Spider-Man, a Wonder Woman television show looking just like this show.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying is, I guess that's even a better example than like it feels like an episode of Wonder Woman or even Buffy, or something. You know what I mean? Like where Buffy has her side thing in her personal life going
Right.
on, and then somebody's going around the school doing this, making wishes, and and then she has to get involved, right? And it's like incidentally sort of crosses over. It just felt like television to me. I don't know.
I think that mixes with the tone a little bit too.
It might.
There's something I like about it. Like I kind of like the fact that it's like
it feels old school.
The secret, it feels like something that could have been in the like the early, not this, but the early Spider-Man TV show where he's just a reporter or something shows up, he deals with it.
It's not a criticism as much as I was trying to figure it out myself. And I kind of hope you guys would have.
I think you're right, because it's like she's the working woman. It's already established. She has her office thing. It's kind of her gig. She's the sophisticated person,
this makes me
hiding
wish
in plain sight.
If we're gonna just do HBO Max, just give Gal and Patty a TV show.
Right.
Like, why are we bothering with movies? Just give them their own Mandalorian at this point. Just do it. I'm down. I know. I'll be there every week.
And you can let all that stuff breathe. Then you can let you can let all that stuff breathe. All of those things, all of those A, B, and C storylines. We can get the Steve body swap movie that's missing from the premise.
Strangely enough, I could see in Buffy the Vampire Slayer doing the Max Lord story, but doing it in one episode, and it would just be super. You know what I mean? It's somebody gets the thing, he starts making the wishes, he gets a little too powerful, she has to slap him down. The end. Next week.
Next week.
That's what I'm saying.
Next week we do Cheetah.
There was something about this movie where I was just like, and then next time on Wonder Woman at the very end. I don't know why. It's just It's some Jimmy's the one who brought up Quantum Leap, and I thought you were kind of on the same track with me. You brought up
where I brought up Quantum Leap. I'm sure it's a little later.
Is it a little later
in the thing? But it's one of these things, Steve. Like when you're gonna introduce a gimmick, a body switch gimmick, that comes with a set. That comes with its own checklist of promises that the audience is expecting based on our understanding of a body switch movie. Right. It is an episode of Quantum Leap that you're supposed to give us in this world. And the movie doesn't even give us the moment when he leaps into the body or the moment when he leaps out of the body. The moment only gives us they only give us the fun. Like, they don't even question who this guy is. Does he have family? Like, they don't give us any out on the town. Like, he has a girlfriend and like he's out on the town, like, and the girlfriend like is like, who's this? Or like, was he dead? And she's in like a dead body, like Steve's in a dead body. Like, the movie, it just completely ignores all that.
The girlfriend also, walking in with Diana and him sleeping together.
Yeah. I know it's there's also some people have brought up some issues like morally with it and everything, but I also find it interesting too that the movie felt it needed to even do the Quantum Leap.
Right. Why?
Because I'm like,
that's the big question.
The Rock can just do stuff. It could just make a new Steve, right? Like, it could just make him appear. Why did it have to be a guy? Yeah, why'd you have to steal his body in a guy's apartment?
If you're not going to do the gags, especially,
then don't introduce it.
It even created some logic problems with me. Like, we'll get to the invisible jet in a second, which is like one of the most eye-rolly parts of the whole movie. But the whole reason they had to do it was because he didn't have his passport, right? But that guy could have had a passport, or that guy could have applied for a passport,
just so
or something.
Clear,
I don't know.
Other people in the world looked at that guy. It's like a hot tub time machine type of thing. They saw that other guy, and we're just seeing what she's seeing, which is really insane if you think about it. Like, we're seeing Diana's perspective of one character only. It's very odd. It's super weird.
And it's like, why did they even have to? It's another one of those things. It feels like they had a board with this. They had the Steve board, and it was chock full of stuff, just like their other boards. And they were like, we don't have time for any of this other stuff. Let's just keep the body switch and the 80s dress up sequence and leave it at that.
Oddly, I'm totally pro the 80s dress up sequence.
Oh, it's hilarious, right?
Like,
But like, my question is, like, he didn't come into that guy's body in World War I outfit. Why does he need a makeover? Like, he's already like he comes into that guy and he's wearing like a decent outfit. Like there's no reason for the makeover. Is what
Somehow
I'm saying.
he found his way all the way to that ball by himself. And yet he can't figure out like, oh, a trash can. Oh, yeah. He was already in the world, like walking around.
Also, there's trash cans in World War One. It doesn't matter.
Right.
No, but I'm just saying, like it's funny. Even the makeover is like inorganic, right? It's like they were like, we need an '80s makeover scene to satisfy the '80s expectations, but like they didn't even come up with a reason for the makeover.
I still enjoyed that part. I totally was down for it.
Oh yeah, dude.
I find him naturally funny. So
dude, my favorite part of the whole movie is when he sprays the deodorant with his arm in his armpit, and he's like obsessed with that. Like, oh my god.
Yeah. Well, this is a great segue because I wrote this down. We'll talk about fun and games because you're talking about fun and games with Steve. And I thought one of the interesting things about the movie is that it kind of has a fun and games problem also, because we were talking about the competing themes. It has competing fun and games, right? Like, I was trying to look where the fun and games were in the movie. And Steve's fish out of water thing is kind of there, but it's not enough.
Not to be like punny, and it's not even punny, but like, Jamie, you've used the fireworks display comparison for your pacing of like events, and their fireworks display for this movie is all out of whack, right? Like they have all this shit up front that's the big finale, and then like it's all out of. I think one of the reasons the fun and games feels off is because of the placement of those that premise delivery.
Should we talk about? Should we define what fun and games is first? I forgot to do that.
Yeah, so fun and games is usually the movie you're coming to see. So, if you were going to see, I don't know, Raiders of the Lost Ark, I always use that because it's my favorite movie. You'd expect Indiana Jones to be hunting the Ark and fighting Nazis. Mm-hmm. That's what this movie gets a little tricky, because if coming into this movie, when I turned it on noon on Christmas, the movie I was expecting to see was closer to her kicking the cars and being in the chase, and less a body switch movie and somebody who learns to walk in heels and somebody, but unfortunately, because of where the lock-in is, or maybe fortunately, or maybe by design, that's really what we got in the fun and games section. And to me, the story hadn't really kicked into gear yet. And I was expecting the Wonder Woman movie, and instead I was getting Steve looking at trash cans, which is fine. And I think it's funny, and I love those kind of movies. But the first movie found a way to combine the two things, the fish out of water and the urgency. Right. This movie, the urgency's put on hold to later, and we get the other stuff, and we're like, really?
The shame for me is that this movie kind of does like this genius concept of switching the fish out of water from the first movie, and then we don't get to play with it
at all.
And that's
one little 11 minutes in the middle of the movie.
I mean, Steve going to the Air and Space Museum is incredible.
It's fantastic.
Absolutely fantastic. I wanted more.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
The trick is weaving that into the story. And
it is.
When they finally got to the story, it was weird that she was bringing Steve along everywhere. Because why?
This time she didn't need him, whereas the last movie, they were both in it for the same reasons, and this time he's just trying to help her figure out shit.
Yeah, and honestly, if I was in her shoes and I'm Wonder Woman, I'd be like, "Look, you already died once. You stay home. I can go. I can get a passport. I don't have to turn a jet invisible where we almost got shot down. If she didn't pull that off, they would have died stealing the plane."
Like Jamie, it's not even just you already died once. It's like I've been alone for 60 years.
Yeah,
don't die. Stay here.
Yeah,
I'm more cautious.
Hide.
Instead, you got him literally driving a tank in another country during a car chase. Like, dude, he could die again. What are you doing?
And the movie really spent a lot of effort, like showing him punching somebody in the background. Like, it didn't even give him like hero moments.
He's back there.
Although, Jamie, I will say, I thought of you because if you notice, his punch sound effects are like identical to Indiana Jones.
Oh, cool.
If you listen to the punch, they sound just like Indiana Jones punch sound effects.
Yeah.
But anyway, what I was trying to originally say with this point was like there should be fun and games with Max Lord and his wishes, right?
Mm-hmm.
There should be fun and games with Barbara getting her new powers and her new confidence.
Right.
Those are both even spread so thin.
Mm-hmm. We got like one scene with Barbara. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's when
a couple scenes at the gym.
I feel like the fun and games is the gym and when she beats up the harasser.
Right.
And she's impressing people at work. She's got the whole crowd gathered around her. She's telling jokes.
Yeah,
she's like, she's like, takes off her glasses. Oh, I don't even need these anymore. And everyone's
right. It doesn't. I don't know. It feels like there's 3 movies again.
Yes.
That you want more fun and games from all 3 of them, and they don't have the time.
They work against each other.
Right.
You hit it. You hit the nail on the head with it. Yeah.
And then for me, the 4th movie, which I came to see, hasn't even started yet.
Right, the Wonder Woman movie.
The Wonder Woman movie.
Right,
that hasn't begun yet.
Which starts 90 minutes in when she has a goal.
The truth is, I would actually be completely fine if this movie was just her and Steve getting reacquainted again and there was no action. I could watch that romantic comedy.
Right.
Like completely I can watch that movie. You don't even need to give me a car chase or anything.
We talked about this in The Rise of Skywalker. It's one of those things where sometimes consolidation is your friend. Sometimes no matter how good all this stuff is that you want to show, it's better for the story if you just trim it down and keep it streamlined, as far as from an emotionally satisfying experience.
And I mean, we've seen this in a lot of superhero movies, but maybe this is the kind of movie where you cut the Kristen Wiig story. You're just like, we got enough. We can cut that one.
That's a good place to talk about.
But I understand, like from a premise delivery standpoint, they wanted to have another female antagonist.
She had to have something to punch, basically.
They didn't want the Superman Returns problem.
Right.
Yeah. But she does feel superfluous.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a huge problem, right? I mean,
it's
a movie that doesn't even need to be there, and it's
a shame.
It's a shame because Kristen Wiig actually does an incredible job. I think.
I agree too.
Yeah, she's really good.
Because like the chemist in the first one, everything the chemist does is consequential to the whole villain's plan. Like the chemist in the first one. You can't cut her out, right? Like, whereas I do agree, like you cut Kristen Wiig out, it's almost the same movie.
You could actually edit her out.
Yes.
Like, I think with the current cut of the movie, there's ways that you could just cut her out.
Man, that's so crazy.
It feels mean to even say, but it's not her fault either.
Yeah.
But Max Lord goes from the White House to the Beam place, whatever that was. And really, it's just Diana has to show up and talk to him. There's not, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't. She doesn't need. Kristen Wiig isn't involved in anything, and she turns into a jellicle cat. Where were we? Setups and payoffs, cause and effect.
And we talked a little bit about some of this,
on it,
like the invisible jet is a perfect example.
Yeah.
The reason that scene kind of stands out, and I think it stands out in a lot of people's minds, is it's like, if you have things like that, like I can make things invisible, well, where does it stop? And also, why doesn't she use that power in other places? Like
before and after.
Yeah. It's just like one of those things, but it's kind of like, what's next? I can breathe fire. I remember now that I can breathe fire. Let me give it a try. It's like you just keep tacking on these superpowers on top of each other without at least hinting at them, so that we're like, there's some kind of.
Can we give a positive here? Everything new she does with her lasso, it is established in the mall scene. The mall scene is establishing the new lasso power.
The expansion of the lasso powers.
Yeah. So,
I think the lasso was well handled.
Yes.
Me too.
I'm trying to give it credit.
Me too.
I'm giving it credit.
I'd say that's a good juxtaposition against this. The lasso is something that
the whiteboard on the
as
lasso.
It expanded. Yeah, she has it, and now we're just milking it for all it's worth.
They absolutely did a whiteboard for all the things she could possibly do with the lasso in this movie, and that is a that is a superhero genre expectation list, right? Like that's what you want from this movie. But Jamie, you made a good point with the invisibility power. Like, where's the limit, right? The importance of placing limitations on the powers, right? And they don't do that at all. Where could she, when you don't place limitations on the powers, then you start micro analyzing it just naturally, like you just said. What's next? Breathing fire? Right. And I loved the invisible from an idea standpoint. It's what you want out of this movie, right? We know in the lore she has the invisibility jet, so you got to put it in. They didn't take the time to make it organic and
they cheated. They didn't earn it.
No, you're right. They
still. They
didn't watch the beginning of the movie and realize.
Jamie, that should have been just your end review to your wife.
That's right.
They cheated.
Why didn't you like it? They cheated.
I would have done it in Robin Wright's voice.
And that's right. Her Amazonian voice.
That's right.
There's the the structure of her powers is such a huge problem on so many different levels.
Showing us what she can do, how she can do it, what she can't do.
And how come when she renounces her wish and gets her full powers back, why does then she need armor to fight?
That was a big question.
I still don't.
To the point where I even heard somebody. I heard somebody so confused by that, trying to argue. Well, they were like, "Oh, she didn't renounce her wish until after she took the armor off." But no, she renounces the wish and then does that running thing and flies or whatever. So that was absolutely not true.
I have so many comments and things that I want to ask. Put out for that. Right? Number one, wasn't the whole first movie, trying to teach her and the audience, she had a god killer weapon that she was carrying around, this special weapon that was supposed to give her the edge. And the lesson she was supposed to learn is that she didn't need a special weapon. It was within to give her the edge.
All along.
It was within her all along. So then this
Thor Ragnarok, right?
This movie then says no. There's this special weapon, but it doesn't tell us why it's special or what it's supposed to do. But they take the time to give it its own backstory, to give it its own moments of importance. They treat it like we talked about this. We just finally talked about this in The Invisible Man. They treat it like the secret weapon, right? There it is. I did my Leonardo DiCaprio pointing to the screen meme. That's the secret weapon. There it is.
Jimmy, it's literally Chekhov's gun.
Right, except
it's not.
It doesn't have bullets.
Right.
By the way, too, it's just marginally better than what happened in The Invisible Jet, right? They basically create a scene where it's like, what's that against the wall? Let me tell you. And it's only marginally better. There's an organic way to discuss that. Maybe the mall heist. That's what she was after or something.
Right. Story. Let me throw this out there. What if you started the movie out with Themyscira fighting the world with the armor?
Right.
And then
cut to her in the Smithsonian dusting it off or something.
A million ways.
Yeah,
but
right.
It's the alien. It's the loader in Aliens. If Ripley just got in the loader and the alien was just and she had to get out of the loader and then keep fighting. It's of no consequence whatsoever once she puts it on.
It goes to so much trouble to say that it was her fighting the world with that armor, and then Barbara just takes out the armor.
Right.
Yeah. So how powerful is Barbara exactly?
And then my other question is, if there was no specific reason she had to do something special to put the armor on, why isn't she always fighting in this?
I always had that question.
It doesn't make any sense.
Why not always wear the armor?
Reach out to the gods or something to be imbued with the armor power.
But since they didn't give us any of that positives, reasons for why to wear it or what happens when you wear it, we're asking all these questions, right? They didn't handle it right, and so the secret weapon does nothing special. It's man,
the secret weapon does nothing special. She does nothing to get it, and then she fights a character who kind of doesn't need to be there. I love it. I absolutely love how much of a mess it is. I'm totally agreeing, mind you.
Yeah.
The Yeah, but anyway, there's a lot of weird setup payoff-y kind of stuff in this thing. That come in like that. But one of my other bugaboos that I always mention was there's one coincidence that happens in this movie, and other people pointed it out, where when they're in what country did they go to where the car chase happened?
Cairo.
Was it Cairo?
Cairo.
And they just happen to drive by.
I
mean, come
laughed
on.
so hard.
There he is.
Oh, he's over there.
That was him.
Yeah.
That was him.
That was him. I mean, come on. We're not even trying at this point, right?
They're yeah. I mean,
Cairo's pretty big.
So we've talked about we didn't really Cairo's pretty big. The world's pretty big.
I live in a small town, and the odds of me driving past any of you guys on any given day is very low.
Yeah, yeah. It's like I'm in Maryland. Oh, Jamie Nash.
Oh, there he is. There he is.
There he is.
So they could have absolved all that, really, because she's a god, technically, right? Wonder Woman's technically like a god, right?
Yeah, she's a goddess.
Okay, so like all they had to do was introduce destiny into this, and it would absolve when destiny is at play. It absolves all coincidence, right? Because you go, well, fate is guiding the wheel, right? But this movie's just like they walk into the office. His boarding pass is right there. And what's funny is the boarding pass has the date on it, right? But he just saw the boarding pass, and then they get the plane to fly, and he's like, "Oh shit!" Like he literally says when he picks up the boarding pass, "If these dates are right, he should be going to Cairo right now." And then the next scene, he's like, "Oh shit! It's 4th of July!" Like,
yeah. What was the deal with that 4th of July thing?
I don't know.
What so bizarre. It was.
No,
there's so many ways, like put a parade that they have to drive by or something.
I know, Jimmy, you're saying to introduce like the whole Force explanation on how she could have found him, but why not just, if they found the passport thing, just add some more papers on the desk or something? Like,
no, I know.
It says he's going to meet with this guy.
No, I know.
You know what I mean? It doesn't. Yeah.
But we've established there's so many coincidences. I didn't count them up, but I can think of 5 off the top of my head.
Yeah.
And we've kind of established that they were not really concerned with that at all, with making the if then.
Yep, the if then structure, the cause effect of things. So instead of saying,
if blank happens, then blank happens, right?
Yeah. Instead of saying then this happens and this happens, it's this happens, therefore this happens, so this happens. It's the opposite. Exactly. In this movie, it really just felt like they had the whiteboard. And they didn't pay attention to how to get from A to B. They were just like, we need to get to A to B. So
really what they gave us was A to D.
Yes.
And they didn't give us B and C. And I see that a lot. Like one of my most common notes is show us the missing story note card, because what we're doing is we've gotten to D, and getting to D was way too easy because you're not interested in showing us the complications of B and C on the way there. And this movie's like trying to be like, well, we can't make this movie 3 hours long.
And this is a personal bugaboo I have with collaborators sometimes, with critics. Whenever people get to that point where they're like, come on, it's just a comic book movie. Right. It's supposed to, who cares? And I've heard collaborators say that. I've heard critics say it. I've heard everybody. Or sometimes you just get, it's just a movie. Or I see shit like this in the movie all the time. People get it.
Turn your brain off. And just have fun.
As soon as I hear that to me, I can't abide by that. I do not abide by that.
Yeah, I need everything to be
to finish off that quote. It was Spielberg that said that. He said, it's somebody that says, "Turn off your brain and have fun." He said, "My brain is where I have fun."
Right.
Oh shit! Yeah. I love it. I'm using it forever.
Yeah.
Even my pal George Lucas once said, "Well, these are stupid kids movies," or whatever he said. Some quote similar to that. And I get the feeling somebody said that during this movie, somewhere in this process of either writing or in post or something. Somebody said
100%.
They said it's a comic book.
They said they put on the board, okay, we need the invisibility jet with fireworks. It's gonna be beautiful. We're gonna put it in the trailer. People are gonna love it. How do we get there? And they said, who fucking cares? Turn your brain off. She works at the Smithsonian. There's going to be a Smithsonian hangar with planes that she can just swipe her card. It literally says on the front, Smithsonian Archives of the front. Because like I watched it again and I was like, what the hell building was that? Sure enough, right on the front of the building, Smithsonian Archives of planes.
Oh God.
Does that exist? Is that a thing that really exists?
No,
I don't know, but they were like, how's she gonna get the plane? And the people, what Jamie's just saying, the people behind the wheel said, who cares? Turn your brain off. She's just gonna get the plane.
Wait, so the plane is fueled? Yeah, it's a comic book.
It still works.
Wait, I thought there was a fuel shortage because of the wish problem.
Yeah, it's a comic book.
It's a perfect place to bring up Cheetah in general. Is that they're like, why on earth would a character that just wanted to be loved and like herself, would she end up being pushed to the point where she wishes to be an animal? Is there any setup to that at all in the movie? At all? No.
Yeah, no.
But she has to become Cheetah. What does it matter? It's a comic book movie. So she just wishes out of the blue to be an apex predator, even though this character is not obsessed with animals.
Hold on. Not out of the blue. She really liked tiger print in the beginning.
She did. I'm saying her clothes are like the one thing that's a setup. Maybe.
There's the setup right there. That's all you need,
is that it? The tiger print?
She loves cheetah print or whatever. She wanted to be like her shoes.
It's just like, it just comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
But she has to be Cheetah in the end, right?
You're right.
Even though it doesn't seem to add to her power level. It just makes her have claws, I guess, and look different.
Yeah, look weird.
It's so nuts. It's such a mess, and it's so nuts.
I love listening to you try to figure out, like, well.
She dressed like Peg Bundy, and then she turned into a cat. But I'm not sure why. It's fine.
It's funny. All of that didn't make me think and laugh the way that it is now. And now the next time I watch the movie, I'm just gonna be laughing the entire time she's a cheetah.
Well, if somebody goes power hungry, they don't just like make it. She wouldn't add that I'm gonna look like a humanoid person.
I guess
she wants to be hot, right?
It could be the monkey's paw of it all. Like, okay, I'll make you an apex predator. Bang, you're a cheetah. But then you should have gotten to see where, oh fuck, I shouldn't have whispered this.
Right.
What the hell?
It's just weird.
That's not what I meant.
The movie made us like, okay, she wanted to be like extra hot, even though Kristen Wiig's already attractive. I didn't like. What is the Wish doing that's making her just have makeup on? I didn't understand that.
Yeah,
either.
I didn't.
But then I'm like, she wouldn't wish to have her
put a little
face
fan
look
in her
weird.
hair. They blew her hair when she walked. They were
It's
like,
just, she wouldn't wish to not look like a human. You know what? It's just insane.
I thought she was really sexy as a cat.
That's. Once again, I want to point out that Kristen Wiig I thought she was great. It's just the script here.
It's the script here.
Yeah,
It's we're
Kristen
talking
Wiig
about the
great.
script.
No, I think she chose to have that makeup. It was like her demand. She did it herself before she went on set.
Poor Kristen Wiig. She's great. We talked about comic obsession, right?
Yeah, we talked about it earlier. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Did we talk about satisfying the genre expectations?
Okay, so I feel
mean?
like you guys were giving me the perfect segue, even you didn't know it, to turning your brain off, right? Okay.
Yeah, Jamie,
so given everything Jamie just said and what Bob said, my brain is where my fun it happens.
My brain is where I have fun.
I think this movie is a monument, a testament to the power of satisfying genre expectations, because most people I've talked to love this movie. And after everything we just discussed, with all of our problems with the story of this movie, why doesn't the story quality matter? It goes back to the Rise of Skywalker, right? They had a checklist of all the superhero genre expectations that the audience would have for this movie, and it doesn't.
Yeah.
And because it satisfies Wonder Woman with a lasso doing all these different things. Wonder Woman in the invisible jet. You have this master list of the very basic things that the audience is expecting because we're working in the superhero genre and it's Wonder Woman as the character. And it does them all. It gives you all those moments. The typical audience member walks away happy. And I think that's like really instructive because when you're choosing a genre, the very first thing that you need to do once you identify that genre is figure out what are those basic things that you need to give the audience based on the genre you've chosen. And I think that the reason that people like this movie who don't have the issues or still do have the issues that we have is because it does a great job at satisfying those expectations. The same way that Rise of Skywalker gives you all of the basic genre expectations we want from a Star Wars movie, right? The lightsaber battles and this and the X-Wing battles and the all the things that
Millennium Falcon and
right. Yeah. So I Jamie, we don't really talk about genre expectations that much on this show, and I think it's like
say that I feel like I've encountered most of the people that hate it. So we've had a
really
different experience there.
Yes, we have.
I feel like an odd man out for enjoying it as much as I did, but
I'm connected to a lot of people who
don't think about this
care
stuff.
about
don't care about
like,
stuff. Yeah,
not fucking film Twitter.
Here's, it's interesting though. I think your point is very valid.
It's totally valid. Yeah,
you can screw up everything else, but if you land this, there'll be some people that like it. Mm-hmm. You know, maybe Steven Spielberg won't like it, but there will be some people that like it. Like I've sat next to those people in Marvel movies, and there'll be some random thing like that's the ring of blah 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 that does that, and it wouldn't even be used in the movie, but they're just so excited to see it because they read about it. Yeah. There it is. There's oh, I knew who that is. That's such and such somebody. So and it's like, yeah, so what? He's just standing there in the background.
We love to talk. If I bring up Film Crit Hawk, he's a great writer. We've talked about on the show before. He always talks about texture versus text. This movie is all texture and not text. But this movie gets the texture right. Like,
right.
I'll be honest. Like, the first movie, I think is a better movie. I'm gonna watch, in the rest of my life, I'll watch Wonder Woman 1984 way more than I'll watch Wonder Woman. You know why? Because I like Gal Gadot's costume more. I like the tone better, and it's more fun to me. It's
able to do a lot more stuff with her superhero stuff.
It's more like Wonder Woman the TV show.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Yeah. it just is, yeah. Regardless of how messy it is.
I in some ways agree with you. I think the first one's much better. It's simpler, stuff like that.
Totally.
I'm not it has a certain seriousness from the Zack Snyder world that's still in it.
That No Man's Land sequence is incredible, literally. Work of art.
It has a place, but I'm more in tone with this type of movie. I mean, this is more my style of movie. I like to laugh and have fun and kind of a broad thing, and I like mixing the fish out of water. And even though the first one mixed fish out of water, but I like the romance and nostalgia and all the other stuff. I like the big mix of it. So in that sense, the texture, you're right, to me is much more appealing and my wife didn't watch the first movie because she doesn't really like superhero movies. She liked the texture of this movie. She enjoyed this movie like for those things because she likes 80s movies and she likes kind of things with a laugh and that are fun and more noon on Christmas morning, quite honestly. That's what it felt. It felt more like that than the last movie. Felt like it had more of a weight and a seriousness and stuff, even though it had
a
fun.
War movie.
You said it in World War I trenches. It's gonna lend itself to that. Yeah.
So I think there's definitely something to be said that if you get some of this texture right, if you get some of these genre expectations right, I go back to David Goyer's interview, Batman Begins. I remember they made a big deal about the first thing they did was they wrote like a whiteboard of things people expect from Batman, and they wrote those, and then they riffed off the rest of it. I think
exactly, and that it's the basic ingredients for the meal, and that's what I was getting at here. it has all those things,
What,
and they did a good job of at least meeting that. And I think
you were talking about like people pointing out things that they reference and screaming, that something that, you know, fans will recognize but normal people won't.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for me, in this movie, you know what my real favorite scene is? When she's fighting Barbara and she's saving people.
Yeah.
She's not letting the guys die at any cost. She tells Steve, no, they didn't deserve it. I was like, the movie might be a mess, but Wonder Woman looks great. The action's awesome, and she cares about people dying. That little bit, it's like a fan of this character has been waiting to see that kind of thing for a long time. And
what you've described is genre expectations.
Exactly. That's what I was trying to conclude on there. Yeah.
And you hit the nail on the head there. That's like, you're a fan.
I'm a huge fan of Wonder Woman. I'm a huge fan of Superman too. Man of Steel does not satisfy my need to see Superman saving people. Mm-hmm. This movie, a mess. It satisfies who Wonder Woman is. The movie itself, this self-contained story, might be a mess, but she's still there. It's Wonder Woman.
And she's doing all the things you wanted her to be doing in the movie.
When you make a superhero movie, genre expectations, the first thing you need to get right, and most importantly, is the hero. And so far, Patty Jenkins has gotten the hero correct 2 times. You can give me a million Wonder Woman movies as long as Wonder Woman's right. Then I'm happy.
That's awesome, Bob. I just for instance, I consult on a lot of scripts that don't do this, right? They have. I just recently consulted on an action comedy, and the person gave me all the comparables. They were like Spy, the comparables, great action comedies, and they had a premise that was a great action comedy premise in its construction, but then their characters weren't like in primal danger, weren't doing anything that had to do with action oriented things until the end of the movie. Their foes weren't primal threats to them. The side characters weren't like, it was missing like the Jason Statham and Spy. He's like, I attached this arm with this arm. Like, so you have those are basic expectations with an action comedy. What types of characters do you need? What types of locations do you need? What types of things are going to happen based on this being an action comedy, right? Just the basic set. And I see that a lot. And then I try to communicate to people, well, you're missing these genre expectations. And for some people, they're not even thinking about that as like one of the early steps in the idea process. And I think this movie is a great example. If there's anything that's a good teaching thing for this movie, it's those genre expectations. Jamie, the David Goyer thing, they absolutely did the David Goyer thing. What are all the things that the audience wants to see in the Wonder Woman movie? At the very least, we have to do all those things. And they did.
And and I give credit to Patty Jenkins and I guess Jeff Johns for that.
Yeah,
all the stuff we could criticize the mess all day, but they did that right. Mm-hmm. What do I want to see Wonder Woman do, and how do I want her to be and act? What's her morality? Mm-hmm. I think the movie answers that properly.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
and I think all these questions of weirdness that we have will all be solved when they release the Snyder Cut.
right.
So finally, all of it will make sense.
Like I said, man, give me. There's an off-screen movie of Steve dealing with the body switch stuff, the Quantum Leap movie. That it's happening off-screen. Like, oh boy.
There's probably like 20 minutes of Snyder Cut where Steve's back in modern day. Another Witch Rock. Yeah,
that'll be the prologue.
It's all Steve. Right. We didn't even talk about it's not just genre expectations, Jimmy. It's also like franchise expectations too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I feel
the
like
IP,
itself, and this IP is a mess, which is it works against them. Like I was actually, when we were talking earlier about Wonder Woman's powers, I was thinking, they really do need to explain how she can take Doomsday in Batman vs Superman. Like, I guess she gets stronger apparently. Because in this movie, I don't think the Wonder Woman in this movie could take Doomsday. I don't know if you guys seen that movie, but she like literally holds off Doomsday.
I still have not seen that movie.
Doomsday kills Superman.
Gotcha.
Wonder Woman holds him off for a good long time, and she's fine. I don't think the Wonder Woman of this movie could do that.
Gotcha.
That's a question of the franchise that expectations we've been given.
They're building to that, I guess.
I guess, yeah, maybe she gets better or something.
She should have shown up with the armor. That's what she should have done.
That also makes the question, how come that armor is not fighting Doomsday? Right. Well, whatever. It doesn't matter. Yeah. I think we covered everything we wanted to, unless you guys have something left.
No, I think we did.
Do you guys want to plug anything?
Jamie, you got stuff to plug.
I'll keep plugging because it's technically not out yet, but you might listen to this afterwards. So Save the Cat Writes for TV is a book I wrote and I'm really proud of, and I hope you check it out. It's in the Save the Cat series. It helps you write TV pilots.
I'm excited for it, Jamie.
I'm so
proud
excited,
of you,
Jamie.
man. Really proud of you.
Super proud of you, man.
It'll be fun. I might make us do like a TV show at that point.
Absolutely.
Why not? Hey,
We'll have to pick a special one. A special episode.
Just don't make me watch Game of Thrones. That's all I ask.
I didn't even break that one down in the book. It's a little weird. It's a little weird as far as a pilot goes. We'll figure one out.
Dude, we okay. That's exciting. Hell yeah. I'll plug because I've talked about it a couple times on the episode. I am a full-time script consultant known as the Script Butcher, and you can find me at scriptbutcher.com. I'm getting a lot of inquiries. I get them a lot early in the year. People, want to polish up their scripts. I am currently booked. This is January, this episode, January 2021, and I'm currently booked through April of 2021. So if you are interested in getting notes, I'm usually booked about 4 to 6 months in advance. So you can find me at scriptbutcher.com.
It's like if you're starting to write a screenplay, that's when you should hit.
You should hit me up and say, yeah. I'm fortunate in that way.
By the way, right in time for contest season. If you do it now.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. Right in time.
I try not to talk about that because I have a love-hate relationship with the contests. I think they're very. But
if you're entering Nichols, book Jimmy right now.
Hey, Nichols is a good one. Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm just going to plug, I'm at Thundergrunt Bob at Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, whatever the hell you want, Just gonna follow me, whatever. It doesn't matter. I didn't write any books or butch any scripters. But, I think that's everything, guys.
Yeah, man. Thanks for listening, guys.
Yeah, seriously.
Bye-bye.
See you guys. Wonder Woman 1985 episode. All right.
Bye.
Later.
You have just listened to Writer's Blockbusters, a screenwriting podcast featuring two professionals and another guy. Available only on Thundergrunt.